Yo, I'm Toycat and welcome back to the second channel geography video. This is a series where we talk about geography and the world and stuff. And today I wanted to talk about wandering aimlessly on Google Maps. This is something you might not understand if you've never done it yourself, just kind of looked around and zoomed in at random spots. It seems like a random thing to do until you realize just how much you can learn about the world by doing precisely this. And today I wanted to show some of the weird findings and some of the weird things you can see directly by looking at Google Maps by showing them to you live here now using a map of the world, which we're going to be doing for over 30 different examples of just weird, unique, exciting things about this Earth that we all live on, or that I live on at least. You might be watching this from space or like in 100 years on Mars. That'd be pretty cool. But right now, you probably live on Earth, which means you might not know that Spain is over here. Okay, you probably knew Spain's over here, but you might not know that just to the south of Spain, there is something called Gibraltar. Gibraltar is actually a British territory, meaning this right here is actually the United Kingdom, which is a overseas territory of the United Kingdom, but it is a part of the UK, and therefore if you are British, this is your country, which is a very weird thing to say the least, that Spain has this giant landmass and then Gibraltar is right here. It's even more interesting when you learn that this is a particularly important strategic landmass for controlling not only the Strait of Gibraltar, but by extension, one of the major land-sea routes, which goes all the way through there for shipping and other forms of boat travel, has to go right through here, which is the reason why the British do control it and have for a very long time. But I wanted to talk about this today, not just because it exists, that might be fascinating to you, that like, hey, that's Spain, hey, this is the UK. Did you know you can find like, I don't know, a McDonald's, a Morrison's, a British supermarket here, stuff like that, you can find that, that's wacky. But also, I mentioned this before, that a lot of small countries don't have airports. Gibraltar is not a country of its own, but it does have an airport anyway, and the way they built this one, you can see, it's so fascinating. They extended the land, and then they built it across, the island, because it's known as the Rock, because it's a giant defendable rock, but it means that there's this very interesting thing where they had to build their airport like sideways across the country, and as a result, it's one of the few airports that if you want to get in or out of the country, even not via air, you have to go over this airport, whether you're walking or taking a car, and it's just such an interesting thing to see that like it's one of the few times where you ever get to walk and run across an airport runway, and it's also one of the more dangerous approaches for an airport in the world. But did you know Gibraltar has an airport, even though it clearly is not a place built for it? They managed to do so anyway, and I always think that's impressive. But you know what else I think is impressive? Let's go to Google Maps again, because when you see Google Earth view, this is obviously the Earth view, this is the map view. When you see the Earth view, it helps you understand Egypt a lot better, because looking at Egypt, you can see that like, oh yeah, most of their population is probably in Cairo, and it looks like there's some form of a nice green corridor here, but looking at it in satellite view really helps you understand how important the River Nile is, mostly for Egypt, but even for Sudan, there is a serious importance to this, because the vast majority, we're talking well over 90% of Egypt's population live within just a few miles off the River Nile, the longest river in the world. And again, you can really see the effect right here where it's irrigated and like properly agriculture leveled, and then you can see the moment where it's just not. There's this moment where all of a sudden the plush green stops and it goes straight back into inhospitable desert. It's fascinating in my opinion, just by itself, as the second thing right here. This also probably helps you understand why if you follow the river down, then you end up with the Blue Nile, which is over here somewhere, and then you end up over in, but by the way, there's a big, dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia, because Ethiopia wants to make a dam right over here. So fun fact, there's a big upset going on between these countries, and now you can hopefully understand why. Just by looking at a map, you can get the feeling for like, oh yeah, so it turns out that, they really do here you can see, I think, is the Blue Nile River. Here is the dam that Ethiopia is building. They're going to be collecting a lot of that water, and that's seriously upsetting to Egypt, because a giant country of like 80 million people has their entire water supply potentially able to be cut off by a country just being like, yeah, we'll just build a dam right here. And yeah, interesting stuff right there. But more interesting to me is not the one part of Egypt that isn't desert, but if you look at the rest that is desert, you can see something interesting every now and then across the country. You can see these very bizarre circles over here. You can see them in various like states of filled in, like a moon almost, and you see them in big collections together right over here. You see some over here, but they're slightly angled differently, and you can see them all across the random bits of the country. If you look carefully enough, anywhere where there's one of these things that's not an oasis, you're going to find some of these big circles This one looks like Pac-Man. What is Pac-Man doing in the middle of the Egypt desert, you might question? And the simple answer, I'll show you a picture, but it's like a crop rotator goes in, you know, like if you have a really long one, it rotates in a circle if you're trying to irrigate them. And it means that there are, you know, kind of like how there's this giant river of irrigation. When you're irrigating crops in the desert, it's very hard. There's no natural water. So it's just the things that are within irrigation distance of your big pipes. And that tends to make a circle. This is the kind of proof that nature doesn't make circles, humans do. It's not a natural feature. It's a feature of humans growing some crops in the desert, and because of how, again, radiuses work when you're pushing something around, it means that instead of getting perfect squares, you end up with lots of circles that don't quite overlap, and it's such a weird, bizarre thing to see in the middle of the Egyptian desert, but you can see it over here lots of different times. As you can see, agricultural phenomenon, 13 pieces. It's even described right there, apparently, and that is very interesting. But let's move from super warm climates, because I love the warm, but you know what I prefer much more? I prefer taking off my jacket and going somewhere much colder, because let's talk about the United States and Canada. So if you look at a map of Earth and United States and Canada, you can see, for instance, that like, oh yeah, the US-Canada border, it kind of makes sense. That's Canada, that's the US, but there's a few places where it really doesn't. Like up here, it's like, okay, there's a big line, but not many people live there, so it's fine, except actually a lot of Canada's population lives not too far north of the line. But the most interesting part is right over here, which you still might not be able to see unless you're paying close attention, because the water looks very similarly colored to the land. This right here is Minnesota. You can see it much better with the map view. This right here is Minnesota, angle Inlet, Minnesota to be precise. And, you know, this right here is a town in Minnesota which has no direct access to the rest of Minnesota besides boat, but that's not practically what happens. Instead, what actually happens, as you can see, there is again, here's a little town. They've got a United States Postal Service thing. They've got an appliance center. They've also got some fishing, it looks like. Yeah, that's nice. A little airport, and then there's a Young Bay resort and a Jerry's Restaurant and Lounge. Wow, they do takeaway, do they? How nice. But interesting enough, you can see how the only road leading out of this place leads to Canada. There is no other way to get between, you know, Anglo Inlet, a very small town, and any major city, or any major town, or any regional town without going through Canada. And that leads to the very interesting situation where this is a border between the US and Canada, which isn't really properly enforced. You just get to the border, and then you're meant to phone up and say, hey, crossing the border right now, and yeah, then you enter Minnesota if you want to, or if you're going the other way, again, if you're coming, if you're leaving rather than coming back, you're entering Manitoba. It's a very bizarre thing because although these people live in the United States, functionally speaking, when they go out of town to go to any big store or whatever, they are going through Canada to do so, even if they do eventually go back into the United States, which means, yeah, there's this weird kind of half US, half Canada kind of aspect to this. There's a lot of examples of this, like the fifth one here, because the same thing happens with Detroit. Detroit is a city where you can live in Detroit, and you can be closer to, you know, Canada than you can be to the rest of Detroit. Here is a, you know, in fact, even if we look at like, you know, here is the campus Mauritius Park. Here is a nice river walk where from here you are just about a kilometer, I believe, over away from the United States. Wait, let me just quickly convert that 760 meters to freedom units on screen right now. I think it's about 32 barrels of fish. Oh no, it's 600 AR-15s. My bad. Freedom units. All good for you American friends. But no, as you can see, there basically is a you know, a very short separation between Detroit and Canada compared to the rest of it. And interestingly enough, something that you always end up seeing when Canada's across the border, like you'll see, for instance, with you know, Niagara Falls, is there's a lot of casinos on the Canadian side because their gambling laws are much more lax. Here is the Falls View Casino Resort, for instance. Here is Casino Niagara because you can't gamble. Oh, apparently you can gamble over there. Now, anyway, speaking of that, that's odd. I wonder if that's newer than the Canadian side one, or if maybe it happened the other way around. Usually the US was very strict on gambling till very recently. But speaking of things that are very recent, I learned just recently about Churchill in Canada. I'd always heard about Churchill being the end of a rail line, but I never knew it was a big thing. But Churchill, Canada is this little place right here. And you might think, why is Churchill, Canada notable? It's something about you being British, isn't it? And although that's a fascinating story we could dive into, let's talk about what you can see on Google Maps instead, because you can see a town which is, you know, has a population of very few. It's literally about 900 people. Even at its peak during the Cold War, there was about 5,000 people there. By the way, as a fun fact, this just blew my mind, that here's a little quote from the town. If it gets me, it gets me. Polar bears, which by the way, they don't wait for you to die before they eat you, they just start eating you. They're the world's largest land carnivore. They'll just start eating you because why not, you know? If you were to build a town today, you would never put it here. There's a lot of really fun quotes you can read up about this place that's just like, huh, yeah, no one really wants this to exist. It's we just kind of are here. And yeah, the big notable thing about this is it's the only real settlement in the far north of Canada that has decent rail access. Because even though it has decent rail access, you'll notice how I can't use Google Street View. Oh. Prove me wrong, but this is the one town where that is true. But if you look at the road network, you'll see how it kind of ends right here. There is no direct road access to the rest of Canada, and if you look at most of these towns that are along the bay, like Port Nelson, for example, you can see how no one lives in Port Nelson. You can see if we look at York Factory, there is, here there are some people, but can you look at Street View? You cannot, because the road networks in a lot of these places are not connected to the rest of the country, which is kind of weird to imagine, like, oh yeah, what about in back? My favorite little... What even is this? It just is a place. Back, and then there's O'Day, Herchmer, Silcox, Weir River, and Sundance. All these places, they exist, but because they're so disconnected from the rest of it, they don't have a real thing. You might imagine that everywhere within your country is reachable by road, or at least for the most part, any major-ish town. But when it comes to the far north places like this, the distance off, even the rail line, like the Churchill to Manitoba rail line, is so insanely long. They had to build 1,000 kilometers, 700 something miles, 16 trillion, McDonald Big Macs. I don't know for sure how you want to have that if you don't like kilometers. But, like the fact is that you have these huge, distances to build a railway. And the fact that they did that is really quite impressive. And yeah, even despite that, the only link between Churchill and the outside world is by this semi-major airport and by rail, which is shocking. And because it's like, wow, what about all these other places? What about Fort 7? And it's like, oh yeah, no, you use like a landing strip or some, again, like you gotta really, really, really push it in some of these places because there's a lot of people who just live in places like this. Obviously, indigenous is a word I don't think people like anymore. First Nations, whatever you want to call, but people who have been living there forever. And it's just like, huh, yeah, it's not something you think about a lot, but it is a big thing, I guess. Speaking of things that are big things, I guess, I mean, Canada is the second biggest country on Earth. But let's talk about, or arguably the second biggest. Sometimes it comes up as fourth, but you know what? How about we don't argue about that? How about instead we argue about a place which we know exists? Because Saudi Arabia is a fascinating one to me to look at anywhere in this country because there is a really decent population in Saudi Arabia. It's 33.7 million. That's, again, it's a lot of people, right? 30 million people living in a country this big. It seems like they'd have a lot of space, but in reality, if you looked at it in a satellite, because again, there's a big stereotype in Africa, like, oh yeah, Africa's so deserty. And it's true for North Africa, which, interestingly enough, is actually often the richest parts of Africa. The deserty, nothing can grow there parts, the bits that often have money, something oil maybe. But basically, the interesting thing is this stereotype isn't true for most of Africa, and is also very true outside of Africa. Like if we look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a country that is just, look at how far away we are from civilization right now. There is a just giant desert, like some of it's a wildlife sanctuary, but there is just desert that is endless upon endless upon endless. You always hear about people going to Dubai and just like driving out into the desert and realizing they can go wherever they want. But Dubai is at least like semi-industrialized. The United Arab Emirates as a whole, Abu Dhabi, the biggest emirate, is not particularly industrialized. This is the city, Abu Dhabi, not the Emirate Abu Dhabi. But, the fact is, like, at least it's semi-industrialized. But Saudi Arabia is such a big country, it's just, which, fun fact, the name Saudi Arabia, like, it's not named like, oh, that's not its whole name. It's like the Arab country. Like, the name basically means, like, it's an Arab country ruled by the House of Saud. It's a absolute monarchy, but I guess you can't see that from Google Maps. So let's just instead say, this is insane. This is just endless nothing. And the borders between all of the countries on the Arab Peninsula are basically demarcated by nothing. If you zoom in, you just see this. What even is this? You see the Google logo, because they plaster all over there, and then you see nothing else after that. What is going on? It's just endless sand, things. And yeah, it's one of the things that generally scares me, like being out there, no access to water. I like water, but you don't get water in the desert. That's what defines a desert, fun fact. Actually, not. Do you want to know a fun fact? Antarctica is actually a desert because it's defined as rainfall, and therefore, even though it's very cold and it's very much wet, because there's no rainfall in Antarctica, it's the world's largest desert. Also, fun fact, I guess, is like Antarctica, everyone always assumes like it's the uninhabited continent, and there's no permanent population, but there are a lot of like non-permanent populations out there. So here is McMurdo Station. It's either the Australian or the American base. I think it's in Australian Antarctica, but it's mostly populated by Americans. People live in Antarctica, and it's a nightmare, but this is technically a desert, an inhabitable desert. More inhabitable than that part of Saudi Arabia. Wacky, right? Speaking of things that are wacky, because we're talking about things that are kind of natural now, let's talk about things that are entirely of human creation. Because Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan have just the most insane borders. Like, do I need to... Can we just say that and leave it there? Be like, look at these borders. This is Uzbekistan. This is... over here is also Uzbekistan. This is Uzbekistan. This is Tajikistan. And this is Kyrgyzstan. Like, within just a short journey, you can be like, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, back into Uzbekistan, back into Kyrgyzstan, without repeating yourself, just going through different territory. It's a real wacky situation with the Kyrgyzstan. With really all of this, like look at this strip of Tajikistan. Why does it exist? Look inside there and tell me if you can come up with a reason for this. Because the actual reason these borders exist is that they were all part of the Russian Empire, and the Russian Empire became the USSR, the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics. I think the two S's the other way around. And it was led by a man from Georgia. And basically, every single part of the USSR was its own constituent republic. There was no more empire anymore. Asterisk, there wasn't empire anymore, because colonialism wasn't cool to have in a communist country, because we're all equal. Asterisk, not all of us are equal. Anyway, with that said, one of the ways to keep the republics from wanting to go independent was to make them hate each other more than they hated the grand state, more than they hated Russia, you could say. And one of the easiest ways to get countries at their throats is to just mess around with their borders and make it complex for citizens to live their life and make it seem like it's the other countries doing so. Massive simplification. Look into Joseph Stalin. You know, I feel like Joseph Stalin isn't commonly torn up at school. Look into him. He's a fun fella. Really great, wholesome guy. You'll learn a lot and you'll feel much happier at the end of that interaction, I feel like. Speaking of borders, though, let's go to the United States and let's go to Mexico. Because a lot of, obviously, the United States... Actually, let's first talk about the fact that, did you know, Puerto Rico is over here? Everyone knows about Puerto Rico, and you're like... especially Americans don't really know the status of it. It's an American colony. Again, I'm not going to make this whole, like, colonization is so bad. Because some countries generally do benefit from being underneath the protection and defense of another one. There are benefits to larger unions as well as benefits to being independent. We're not going to talk about that here. It's a map video. But the United States owns Puerto Rico in a really wacky, way. Like, again, that is effectively the relationship. And what makes that so wacky is the fact that, one, this is the separation. Here's Florida to the Bahamas. I want to say it's about 100 kilometers. I want to say... could be wrong here, but I think that's about 667 roadkill possums. Again, not quite sure on how to convert that to imperial for all of you, but I'll show you in freedom units on screen. So it's 110 kilometers to get from Miami to a foreign country, or West Palm Beach to a foreign country. How far is it from Miami, again, the closest state, to Puerto Rico? It is 1,565 kilometers. I'll give you the miles. Oh, they're on screen right now. I don't have to be sarcastic about this one. It's almost 1,000 miles to get between this and the rest of it, but it is still the United States, which is really weird when you look at the fact that, like, oh yeah, they speak Spanish there. It's not a state, it's just a territory. It belongs to the United States again. But that gives them all the benefits of being US citizens. There's a lot of weird downsides, upsides of being a state. We can't act like it's as simple as they should be a state, they should be independent, they should keep their current situation. All three of them have advantages and disadvantages that we're not talking about in this video. No, what we're talking about the fact is a place that looks like this, with street names like Calle de Sol, Transito. It's all in Spanish, that's the language of the place. That is an American man living in the United States of America, which is what this is. This is the USA. Not, oh yeah, this is the USA asterisk. If you are here, you can take a domestic flight to the rest of the US, and if you are a citizen, you have the right to live in the rest of the US because you are in the United States of America, and vice versa. It's wacky, it's weird, and it's something people forget about a lot. You also might forget about the fact that, looking over here at Cuba, did you know Cuba, it's an island. Most island nations, obviously exceptions that with high population densities like the UK and Japan, don't have train systems. Cuba has an entire rail network across their entire country. You can zoom in any major city and you'll see that it is connected to that rail network, which is quite shocking actually. It's one of the, again, it's easy to like simplify and be like they're a bad country. There's lots of things that are off in Cuba, perhaps you could say. There's lots of things that are on, and trains across the country, all the way to places like Moron. This is the Moron train station. Places like that. This is literally, your address would be Moron, Cuba. Man, I want to go to Moron, Cuba. I want to find their sign and like stand next to it or in front of it or something. I need to see this now. Please tell me the sign to Moron is right here. Don't let me down now, Google Maps. Don't let me down now. So yeah, did you know this area, this Spanish-speaking, technically I think still communist country, maybe just socialist. I'm pretty sure Castro's son or successor is in place right now. But this country used to be part of the United States, and just as easily, with just a tiny switch in history, could still be another U.S. Colony, U.S. thing. Anyway, I find that interesting. Maybe you did too. But maybe the fact that there's just a Spanish-speaking part of the U.S. called Puerto Rico. Again, that's Puerto Rico, San Juan, and all these places. Vigabaga. Baja, I guess it would be, because it's Spanish. I don't speak Spanish because I don't live in the United States of America, where Spanish is one of the languages spoken in one of the parts of it. Anyway, but yeah, maybe it's not surprising to Americans, because the second biggest city in the United States is Los Angeles, which is literally Spanish for the angels. Same with Las Vegas, although that means the valley, I think. Anyway, whole different thing here. But yeah, let's talk about the fact that, obviously the United States, a lot of its territory came from Spain, not just Cuba and Puerto Rico because of a whole war, but also because of a war with Mexico, Texas and New Mexico, Tejas, I think it was called. A lot of these states are. And one of the kind of remnants of this and how unnatural the border is between Mexico and the United States is the fact that when you look at this border, you can see it's very straight in very weird ways, like it was perhaps made by a treaty. And you can also see that like Baja California, which is, I believe that means Lower California, because there was Alta California, which is now just California, was meant to be part of the much bigger kind of thing. And interestingly enough, that means that Baja California is very, very loose as a peninsula. Like there's like 2 roads between Baja California and the rest of the Mexican peninsula, rest of the Mexican country, as you can see right here. So maybe you didn't know that, maybe you do. But something else you might not have known is that there's a little town called Calexico on the Californian side of the border, and on the Mexican side, Mexicali. I find that cute. Maybe you don't find that cute. Maybe you think that's awful. Maybe you think that's a whole thing. But yeah, you can see that there is a side on the American border, and a lot of these border towns are very heavily Mexican too. So we might actually end up seeing, if we go through here, okay, let's see if we can get a Spanish sign. Payless shoe sauce. I guess street signs are always going to be English. Let's see if we can find like a nice little... This just says 2nd Street in Rockwood. I didn't prove anything. Besides, there is a money changing counter they're doing right there. So there's something for me. Anyway, with that said, also Calexico has its own airport. Huh, that's interesting. Does Mexicali have its own airport? It does not. Mexicali is clearly the biggest city. Maybe it's just somewhere outside. Let's not talk about airports. Oh, there we go. There's the airport. Okay, I could look at Mexicali and Calexico all day, but we're going to stop ourselves. And we're going to move on to talking about Texas a little bit. Just because, did you know, same thing? Texarkana, halfway between Arkansas and Texas. Texarkana. Isn't that fun? Isn't that crazy? Again, like, state borders in America are much less lax than international borders, despite the fact that all your laws change and stuff, which means that you can literally like have a grid system, and it's like, yep, I'm driving, and welcome to Arkansas, like midway through a city. A lot of people don't appreciate this, but this happens not just with the American states, because again, they're so big that you might not assume that happens too commonly, but it does. But it does happen very, very loosely with Australia. So Australia is a country where all the population, like, no one lives on Australia except in very small pockets. I mean, we've all seen population maps, right? Wait, population maps, right? Wait, I'm gonna angle myself properly. population maps, right? There we go. Look at that. That's beautiful. So we've all seen population maps of Australia, and it's wacky just how sparsely populated the country really is. But when you look at the individual cities, you see some interesting things. So first of all, I think Sydney is always a delightful city to look at because it's a mess of a city. Look at this. This is the biggest population center in all of Australia, and despite that, the land is just built very wackily, and like it's connected by boats. Boats and ferries are a significant way that the country is connected to each other. As you can see right here, there's like ferries that link the little islands, and it's a major thing. You can use the public transport network in Sydney allows you to tap on and off of ferries like you would on an underground or something. Again, very interesting how the cities have to build to where they are, but also, because I mentioned this was related to the previous thing, most of the Australian states are connected by just roads going across either nothing or next to nothing. Here is Victoria, here is South Australia. You're driving along the Prince's Highway, which is a cute name, and you don't really notice anything because you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no real population that's anywhere near the border, besides some farmers. But what you do see, interesting enough, between, I think it's both between Victoria and New South Wales, you see every now and then there's a border town. Like, oh, look at this. Here's Albury. Although actually, there's a river here, so we'll give them a break. There's McDonald's too. Someone got really upset in my video where I was talking about the 50 biggest cities about how in Europe about how often I talk about McDonald's. So just for that guy, should we go look at the McDonald's in Albury? Look at this. This is a video on the internet. I can do what I want. Am I going to look at McDonald's just to spite one human being? Yeah, I am. Oh, that's a fancy Australian McDonald's. That actually is a really nice looking McDonald's, right? Like, bet you guys want to visit Albury, New South Wales just to see their McDonald's. Maybe that's not fancy. Maybe I just have low standards. That's me and pretty much everything in my life, though. Speaking of things in my life, you can also see if we go to like New South Wales and it's called the Queensland, right? So these two states are the two that are actually like closest in terms of like actual land borders and actual like having to do stuff together. So the Gold Coast has an airport right on the border, so you might fly into there if you're flying into New South Wales. And also, if you look, the border just kind of like cuts right through. Oh, the airport itself, wackily enough. But also it cuts right through the town, which again, it's one of the very few cases where this happens in Australia, like a major population center being cut off midway through. Here's a roundabout. You can be going round this roundabout and you can be like, Queensland. Right now I'm in New South Wales, and then I'm on the other side of the roundabout, and I'm in Queensland, okay? And then we're going to go around it again, and we're in Queensland, we're in Queensland, we're in Queensland, you can see in the top left. And now we're back in New South Wales. You could go around this roundabout forever, and you could cross state borders forever. Although that's not how roundabouts or traffic laws work, but it totally is a thing. And it means that, yeah, this one little town right here, which is effectively the Gold Coast, but it's not, it's outside there, is very much divided between the two states, even to the stage where, like, look right here, you can see that Boundary Street, oh, that's cute, they call it Boundary Street. You can see how there actually is a street that is, like one half is on the New South Wales side, one half on the Queensland side, and yeah, maybe you find that wacky. Maybe this is just me fascinating over borders again. I can make a whole video about borders, but you know what I won't do? Exactly that. Because I want to talk about Singapore. Singapore's a city-state. Look, this is a country. If I start talking about Singapore, I can't stop myself. I love the country so much to say, so much to love, so much to see about Singapore. But for now, let's just say it be beautiful. And it's one of the only countries, one of just two really functionally, besides island countries. Although Singapore is an island country, but Singapore is one of the only countries that is actually a city-state. The entire thing is one collective city. There is no, there are neighborhoods in that city, but the country just has neighborhoods. The country doesn't have cities because the city is Singapore. And that's real wacky in my opinion. The closest you can get to like leaving Singapore, the city, is Sentosa. It's like an island that's connected by like a cable car. And it's like, yeah, you go over there. It's like your little vacation spot. And it's like, oh, how long does it take you to get there? Oh, about 20 minutes, 30 in bad traffic. And yeah, the whole island, you can drive from any point in the island to any other point in about an hour or less. I mean, an hour would be really pushing it, like realistically half an hour or less. And yeah, because it's got a fascinatingly well-built public transport network, you can do the same thing there. I like public transport, you probably know. So let's talk about Bangkok, because Bangkok is a huge Asian metropolis. They want to be like a financial heart of Southeast Asia, and they do a pretty good job of that. And one of the interesting side effects of having such a big city that's built over time in such an interesting way is that they've adopted a lot of like Western style transportations. For instance, they built a metro, as you can see right here. The M stands for metro. It says underground, although I'm 99% sure that the vast majority of the metro is not only not like below ground, but it's like floating on highways above it. Like here is the street. Look how Thailand looks. Up there is the metro. Like the metro is very much above street level, but you know, I won't be too fussy about that because instead, let's talk about, hey, did you know that because of the way that the city was built and it conveniently has rivers going through it, there is actually a major form of river transportation called the river ferry. Again, every city can adapt to what it has, and in the case of Bangkok, there are river ferries that take you from point to point within the city, and it's just such an interesting thing that these tiny little, like, rivers, these little water bridges or whatever, are a major form of transport, and it really reinforces the point that people forget. Again, I mentioned it with the whole Strait of Gibraltar thing, I mentioned it with the whole shipping routes thing, I mentioned it time and time again, the most important thing in the world is water. Water and shipping, it's literally a road that never needs to be maintained, does itself for free. You put a boat on that, it's really cheap to run. And yeah, water is actually a more effective road than roads are. It's just roads are easier to get off and on, and like they're worth the cost. But the cheapest form of transport is the sea, and that's why having it be real good, in my opinion. Next up, let's talk about Hong Kong. This is a place where nothing controversial is happening these days, so we can move on and just say, what a delightful part of Southeast Asia. And then look at Macau, which is a very, very interesting situation where it's an island that has kind of expanded. And a lot of people use Macau to prove that, like, even if you're an island with limited space, you can still build an airport because the entire airport of Macau built on reclaimed land. Like, the terminal itself is on natural land, you can see it kind of curves, but they just built an entire runway on reclaimed land. It looks like this, and it's actually a really good way of doing airports, because they haven't just done it in Macau. Can you tell I like transport? I feel like it's becoming a little obvious. They've done it in a few places. So Osaka has 2 airports, and one of Osaka's airports was built over the sea, Kansai International. This is the big one you'll probably fly into, KIX Airport. It's a whole pain to get to, but it's so beautiful. Like, again, look at this. There's like they built a bridge out to the airport that they also made. Like, that is the level of like engineering they've gone to, where it's like, yeah, we'll build an airport in the middle of the sea, and we'll build a bridge to get to the airport. It's like, yep, seems logical, I guess. But also, this is not just a one-off thing. Just over the sea, as you can see, same thing happened in Kobe. It's a very, very, very common thing to just build bridges, to just build airports, and then to bridge out to those airports that you built, because it saves land space, and it means that there's no takeoff noise. A lot of people don't like those takeoff noises in places like, one of the places that really fought against it is Narita Airport. The second, I think the busiest international airport in Tokyo, in Japan even, and one of the busiest in Asia, exists right here, and the local residents really didn't like that, so building them in the sea is the new solution, I tell you. Which is why, as you can see over here, Haneda Airport. How nice. So speaking of places that have built their airport overseas, let's talk about places that haven't, because Cyprus is a very interesting country. I mean, it should just be a country full of Cypriots, right? It's a former part of the British Empire, and it's hugely controversial because Turkey and Greece hate each other, and one of the parts of that was this island, which was a slight majority of Greek Cypriots, but there were some Turkish Cypriots there too. So this is a island that, depending on how you want to count it, has 1 to 4 countries on it. So Cyprus is officially the part that is in control of the majority of the island. The UK retains some military bases that are sovereign territory of the UK. Akrotiri, and Decoteria. You know, I'll just pronounce it so bad that you think I'm joking. So the UK owns 2 parts of the islands. Cyprus officially owns all of it, but Turkey invaded in the not too distant past, and as a result, half of the island belongs to the North Cyprus, the Turkish Republic of North Cyprus, a country only Turkey recognizes, which is interesting because every other country that is like sort of a country but not has someone recognizing what's going on there. Turkey has no friends in recognizing North Cyprus, but as we all know, the real power in like owning territory is not what the world says, although that's a big important part. It's in having your people be on the ground and recognizing it yourself. And so yeah, there's Turkey, or the Turkish North Cyprus Republic, there's Cyprus, there's the UK, and then there's this UN buffer zone. To stop any fighting happening, there is a zone agreed between the two where that cannot happen, and that is very interesting in my opinion, because this right here is Cyprus. This is also Cyprus, but this is Turkish Cyprus. So yeah, just they divided the island along ethnic lines. Something maybe you like, maybe you don't. Maybe you think that's bad. Maybe you think that's good. Also, it's very wacky to look at right here. Speaking of places that are wacky to look at, along the same lines, again, it's just one of those shocks to me because Cyprus is a very interesting to look at country, just because of the borders. Let's go over to Malta, which is the same rough situation. It's one of the smallest EU countries. In fact, it's the very smallest country in Europe that isn't a microstate. And it's a country that's like, again, it's a shock to know that this is Europe. Because of the climate location that it's in, you'll see how if you look around anywhere, it has the exact same vibe. Actually, like the closest thing in this video we've gone through is probably San Juan in Puerto Rico. There's an Air China building office there. But you can see how like, oh yeah, this is Malta. There's a Canadian flag, an Air China office, and so there's British road signs. And that's Malta for you. That's Malta for you. But no, you can see that Malta just has this really weird vibe. As a result, a lot of like filming is done here. I mentioned this fun fact a trillion times, but you can't stop me. Game of Thrones was filmed in Malta. Can you guess? Can you tell? Are you aware of that fact? I hope you are. If you're not aware of that fact, then maybe a fact you should be aware of is that if you want to go looking at North Korea on Google Maps, you totally can actually. Google Maps in North Korea has pretty decent coverage. There's obviously no street view, but you can see things like the Workers' Party Foundation Monument. Excited for this one. Oh my god, it's a hammer and a sickle. How nice. You're not. So, yeah, the North Korea, very big city, fun fact. Very big hotel we won't talk about for now. But the thing about North Korea is North Korea is visible on Google Maps. You can go zoom in wherever you like, but South Korea is not. You know, we like to claim that South Korea is the good Korea, but what if South Korea is the murderous dictatorship where everyone's dying and no one's allowed to leave, and North Korea is the good one? That's obviously an awful conspiracy theory. Like, any amount of research will reveal that, like, oh yeah, no, North Korea is the one that regularly kidnaps, takes hostages from other countries to get negotiating chips. North Korea is the one that has stolen thousands of Japanese students across the time. Fun fact, that's a real thing that's on the screen. But yeah, South Korea, because I assume for North Korean reasons, does not make their data publicly available. So the mapping data for South Korea is really, really rough. There are actually South Korean mapping apps that will work in South Korea and presumably outside of it too. But Google Maps is not allowed that data, and it's the one big hole in their coverage. Like, they can't show off US military bases, of course, but like South Korea, you can't really see what's going on. You can't click on the towns, you can't really see stuff normally in South Korea. Do you want directions from place to place? They don't really work here either. It's really sad because the one place you can't properly explore is South Korea. You have to go to Street View or apparently River View. This is a nice river. South Korea is one of those countries I really wanted to visit. It looks like it might be a while until I can do that now, huh? So I guess I'll visit North Korea in the meantime instead. Again, North Korea, best Korea. I'm just saying, why is North Korea not hiding their data? It seems suspicious. Also, fun fact about South Korea, a lot of people don't realize when they think of a country, they think of the main landmass. A lot of countries have like external islands. I mean, like Japan is one big island, but then there's Sapporo to the north, and there's Kyushu to the south, and then there's this thing I forget the name of. Tokushima sounds right. Shiokuku, I don't know. But you know, then like for instance, Japan has these islands down here. Okinawa is there's a group of people there that aren't Japanese. They belong to the Japanese for empire reasons, blah, 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 blah. That's how every country is. We just don't like to admit it until it conflicts. Unless it, like, matches our worldview, we don't admit it. And if it conflicts with our worldview, we're like, oh, it's totally different, though. So this is Japan, but it's also kind of not. And it's also more American than it is anything else because... Also, look, they built their airport on the sea. Japan, they're good at that. So, yeah, this is Okinawa. There is a huge US military presence on the island, something the locals sometimes aren't too fond of. But it also goes as far south as, like, Ishigaki. Look at this. There is a part of Japan that is closer to... Is this also... Yeah, this is also Japan. The westernmost point in Japan, I definitely didn't find that out from this little monument right here, is all the way over here, closer to Taiwan than it is to mainland Japan. In fact, the westernmost point of Japan is closer to China, Taiwan, the Philippines, South Korea, North Korea, maybe Mongolia, than it is to Tokyo. Not Mongolia. You know what, that's sad. To Vietnam, though? Yeah, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Philippines, South Korea, North Korea, than it is Japan. Lots of countries have islands that are very far away from the main thing. South Korea has Jeju, which is like a huge tourist destination. Again, it was on my list of things that I was going there this year. Fun fact, I'm not. This is Toycat Rants about not being able to travel places. But when I do want to travel places, do you know what I do? I like to look at Google Maps. So I am going to be living in Las Vegas for 3-ish months. I might have explained that somewhere before on this channel. Maybe I haven't. Maybe we'll just leave it without context. I've got a gambling problem, so I'm moving to Las Vegas. And you know what you want to do when you want to look at casinos to fix your gambling problem? Also, you know, if you had a gambling problem, moving to Vegas is like the worst way to... You know, whatever. I've got a gambling problem, but like the good type where I'm making money from gambling. That's my new story. So you want to look around a place? The best way to do it is, honestly, just look around for Street View. I love this as like a way to explore a place before I've seen it. And also just look around at the map. Like, oh yeah, when I'm in Vegas, I want to go to a National Atomic Testing Museum. Or, you know, I want to go to an Albertsons, I don't know what that is, honestly. Or I want to go to an Olive Garden, because people on the internet mock me relentlessly for going to America and eating Olive Garden. So I'm going to do it just to spite them. My whole life is just spiting people on the internet. But no, for real, looking around a place in Google Maps that you want to go, or are intending to go, is a great way to, like, find spots that you might want to go that are otherwise out of the way and hidden. Like, using a tourist book guide or whatever, you'll find the most popular things. But the most popular things aren't going to line up with what you like. I might want to go to the Craig Ranch Skate Park. I don't think I'm allowed to say that, actually. I might want to go to the Shadow Creek Golf Course, or the Human Bean. The Human Bean. I'm going to go to the Human Bean now, because that's how you find lots of things. Like, cities are huge. Even when it's just 1 million or so people, I think it's about 2.5 million people living in Vegas. Even when it's that many people, just that few, only 2.5 million, so tiny compared to London. There's so much to see. Just over here, there is a Casa Lola. Lola's, they got a 1-star review. You know, I don't know what they did wrong, but it's not very good. I won't stay there, but I might go to Rally's, the fast food restaurant. Never heard of it. Should I go? Chat, give me your recommendations. If you live in Vegas, email ibx2cat@gmail.com. Let me know what you like about living in Vegas, because it's a thing I'm going to be doing very soon. So, anyways, so ibx2cat@gmail.com. ibx2cat. Email me if you've got recommendations. If you live in Vegas yourself. If you don't live in Vegas, don't give me recommendations. Get out of here. Next up, let's go to Africa, because I bless the rains down in Africa. So we're going to go to the parts of Africa that actually do get rain, because again, not all of it's a desert. You can see very clearly from Google Earth. But let's talk about Togo, because when we're talking about countries I've got to go to, we can't talk about the country that I've been in. I had to do it. I'm sorry, I'm the worst human being. But let's talk about Togo, because the capital of Togo, Lomé, is here, and this is Ghana. Ghana, capital of Togo. Again, this is the interesting situation that happens all over the world, but this is one of the most staggering examples of it, where effectively half of Togo is a part of Ghana. And the reason for that is because all of these places were separate colonies, and the part of it was called like Togoland. The colony of Togoland voted to be part of Ghana, which means lots of Togolese people live within the borders of a place called Ghana. That's where the issue of like calling a country, you know, assuming that Togo is the country, Togolese is the language, and the people are Togolese, really starts to break apart in Africa. Here is a map of the ethnic groups in Africa. Here is a map of the borders in Africa. As you can see, they don't line up. Wow, that's sure wacky. Even a country like Madagascar, which is an island, has a huge ethnic diversity. But so let's ignore the ethnic diversity for now. You know what? Look at me. I'm doing a great job of being a British person looking at Africa, aren't I? But let's ignore the ethnic diversity and let's instead focus on the fact that, hey, isn't Madagascar a real interesting country? Like, again, just following, kind of going against the normal rule that, like, oh yeah, inland is usually not where the people are. The capital of Madagascar, it's on screen. I'm not going to say it out loud. I know how to say it. I'm just not saying it. The capital of Madagascar is surprisingly well put together, I would say. You can see how they got themselves a train station going all across the island. A lot of people think of Madagascar as being the Great Wilderness, probably because there's a movie called Madagascar where it's portrayed that way. But fun fact, Madagascar is a huge island with actually pretty decently developed places. Look at this. Look at that grid system. You ever see a grid system that well put together? Man, that's like too gridded almost, right? Like, whose idea was that? Like, why are there grids with a single house in each part of the grid? Is that, that raises more questions than it asks. Yeah, like, because grids vary all around the world. Perhaps, going back, one sec, this is the biggest grids I've seen yet. But like, Las Vegas, I always think things are way closer than they are. Like, I'll see something and be like, oh, it's only like a block away. If you look at the major roads, it's like 1 block, 2 block, 3 block. No. Blocks do not work that way. This is my pro tip for Vegas. This might be 1 block, but it's like a mile by a mile. It might literally be longer than a mile. It's 900 meters by 900 meters. These blocks are giant, and walking across them takes a correspondingly giant amount of time. So yeah, fun fact. I'm going to leave like Vegas though. Someone's going to be like, Toycat, you're talking too much about yourself in your YouTube video. And you know, that's true. This is about the world. And the world doesn't live where I live, in London, the UK. So London is a fascinating city to look at. Where do I even start? I don't even start. I say look at it yourself. Go look at London on a map. Learn some things. Tell me those things, why don't you? Why don't we look at, like, barking? It's like it's a dog. Haha. Barking, you see, like, there's dumb place names all over London. But, yeah, so let's look around it real quickly and be like, did you know, despite the fact that London is a giant city, and it's like the center of the UK, there, until recently, were no major crossings via rail, and as a result, there's lots of London train stations. London King's Cross, London St Pancras, London Euston, London Marylebone, I think is the one over here. I met a girl once at Marylebone, I think. Yeah, wait, I'm doing that thing again where someone's gonna be like, Toycat, this is a tour of the world, not a tour of your exes. So I met an ex once in Paddington. I don't think I did. I met Microsoft there once, and they're basically an ex if you think about my relationship with them. We've got Victoria, which, like, haven't dated Queen Victoria yet, but if I was alive in the 1800s, I would have had a good chance, right? Then we've got, over here, Waterloo, a delightful one. Charing Cross, which is, fun fact, like, whenever you think about the distance between places, you know, it's often measured as a certain land point. The center point of London, in terms of how you measure on maps, is Charing Cross, not the station, which is like kind of near Charing Cross, but instead it's this point right here. Maybe this isn't Charing Cross. I'm pretty sure this right here is Charing Cross, the point itself. But yeah, when everything is measured to this roundabout right here, I'm like 99% sure. I'll just say it, you know, fact check me. I'd love it if you did that. These videos get better when people fact check me on things. So yeah, well, I learned some more things. I'm just gonna say wrong facts so people teach me the right facts. Did you know France is actually the size of a banana? Like, look at the size of my thing. I wish I had a banana. I have a Toycat plush. You seen this? It's cute, isn't it? You can't buy one. Wait, here's the wacky thing. France is actually smaller, is bigger than the whole world. Here is my to scale example of that. This is a map of the world. This is France. France is bigger than the map. And the reason that's important is because scale. So scale is really important to help you understand how big some places are and how small they can be. Some places look really big, but they're really small. Some places look really small, but they're actually really big. And what better place to go to prove that than, like, Ulaanbaatar, a city that is, like, again, very, very, very widely stretched. It looks like, at least. But in reality, Ulaanbaatar is actually a pretty small city. Again, if we go with, like, the distance from one city to the other, it's, like, pretty medium, right? Like, for the largest city in a country, Ulaanbaatar, what is that, like 10 kilometers across, let's call it? Whereas if we go to a much bigger city, say Shanghai, and you can't even say where Shanghai begins and ends, but if you try with Shanghai, it's like, oh yeah, this goes like at least 100, but even then, the built-up area of Shanghai is just kind of endless. Because yeah, they might look the same if you zoom in at just the right angle, but knowing about scale is really important. I definitely wasn't just making a joke, I'm backing it up now. So fun fact, did you know China? Very populated. Did you know they have a lot of people? Like a billion something? It's 1.3 billion. Every time I look at the number, I'm like, my god, that's a lot of people. I actually learn about the number when I'm going on like the coronavirus stats. I'm like, you know, let's see how many people live in China, because like it's per capita number. And you're like, okay, so China has 83,000 people, 83,000 cases, and how many? 1.43 billion? Oh Jesus, their population's increasing significantly faster actually than their cases of the thing. Isn't that good for China? But yeah, an interesting result of that is that there are megacities forming because Shanghai, big city. Changzhou, big city. Hangzhou, big city. Suzhou, big city. Huzhou, big city. Wuxi, Nansong. They're so big, in fact, that the gaps between them are starting to become unrecognizable. Like, there were always towns between them, but China is just starting to develop like a mega set of cities. Guangzhou is the biggest example of this. Guangzhou, giant city. Dongguan, giant city. Shenzhen, giant city. Hong Kong, technically across the border, but a big city. And it all comes back to Hong Kong, doesn't it? But look at the road networks of these places. Huge. Look at the built-upness of these places, and it's like, oh, it's just endless people. It's just people, 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 people. And yeah, you don't really, like, when you look picture China, you might not know this, but half of the country is pretty much desert, almost uninhabitable. Like, if you look at Xinjiang, you know, the place with all the Uyghurs that we don't talk about too much on this channel, and because China doesn't want you to talk about them. The Seibag district, but I'm just kidding, that's not the real reason. I'll talk about some concentration camps in China, all I like. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because if you look at it, you can see that, like, okay, there is like a few population centers and nothing else. China has both the areas where no one lives and the areas where everyone lives all at once, because every country has a population density that you can start to feel by looking at Google Maps. Look at, say, Spain on Google Maps. You can see Madrid has a lot of roads, a lot of infrastructure. You can see Salamanca and Valladolid have the same, in Zaragoza. But for the most part, almost all the big cities, all the infrastructure, at the very least, the big roadways, are between the, again, you can see right here, the kind of like coastal towns. Again, that matches, if you look at a population map, same kind of thing. Same with Portugal, everyone is on the coast. If you look at the UK, it's kind of different because the population, like the big buildings are like here, and then there and there. And then there's a little bit in Scotland, and then it's kind of dead between, like, again, there's like 3 major centres, Glasgow, Edinburgh, the north, let's call it, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, and then there's London, and then sort of smaller in Bristol and Cardiff. But you can start to see where people actually live and where they need things to get to each other, and it helps you to start understanding why countries build the things they do. Why Dublin, you know, is linked, the half the Irish rail network is in Dublin, half the Irish road network is in Dublin, because half the people live there. It makes sense that more people want to go from Limerick to Dublin than Limerick to Galway, etc. Although there is a motorway between those two places. Should we take a motorway journey together? Let's do it. You know, this is some exciting content. Toycat drives down the Irish motorway, the N18. It looks pretty dark for a motorway. Am I crazy, or is this like really dark? Is this like a new motorway? What's the deal? You know, if you want to see me drive around an Irish motorway, we'll be doing a live stream somewhat soon where you can see precisely that. We might even make it to King John's Castle one day. You never know. But you know what you do know? You know that you watched an entire ridiculously long 45+ minute video. I don't actually know how long it is right now. All about interesting places in the world. Iceland. It's interesting. There we go. You know what? Just in case we haven't made 30, because I haven't kept count as I'm going along, here's the number right now, and here's the number after I say Iceland. It's real interesting. Here's a little town in the middle of nowhere, and that's cute. Here's the number after I say, did you know that Laos is a place and Luang Prabang is a city people visit, and it's very interesting. Look at the river. Look at the way this town is built. There we go. That's probably 30. But if it's not 30, did you know that the Philippines is made up of lots of islands, and it's hard to like get between all of them? So if you want to get from, say, Manila, which is, I had a Filipino girlfriend once, and I dated a Filipino girlfriend once. You know, long story, but like Manila is all the way over there, but the parts of the country we want to be in is like Cebu, all the way over here, or Davao, and to get between them, if you wanted to go by land, there are bridges and ferries and stuff, but like the way this country has to be built, because it's pretty industrialized, is insane. Look at all the roads and the bridges. Geography is a very interesting thing, and I hope that this channel brings you closer to realizing just how interesting and vast it truly is. But I also hope that this video taught you that you have to just go out there and Google some stuff and learn about some interesting places, because the world is giant. You could spend all day just looking at one part of Ukraine, let alone the rest of Ukraine, let alone the rest of the world, and maybe that's a thing you should do. Or maybe you should just give up and decide, I'm just gonna, you know, go home, watch some Toycat videos, and take a nap. I don't know how you live your life, but I do know that this has been a second channel video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I tell you to subscribe, but I'd rather say second channel. Don't care. Goodbye.